Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program is about to begin. At this time, please turn off all electronic devices. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program is about to begin. At this time, please turn off all electronic devices. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Leroy Petrie and Jim McCloughan.
Jim, you there? And then John C. Excellent. And if I could ask everybody to remain standing for just one more minute, as we are going to invite the Royal Highschool Junior Airforce ROTC to present the colors.
and gentlemen, please put your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, and please be seated. Thank you. If you will, I want to say a special thank you to Pamu Patabanla and Joaquin Mejia for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Excellent. Well, my name is Tony Penny. I'm the Chief Learning Officer here at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation. And if Ronald Reagan were here today, he would be very excited for two reasons. One, he was such a supporter of the armed forces and what they meant to this country, knew very much what it meant, the price of freedom. So he would be very, very excited to see these two great Americans and American heroes on site today, sharing their stories, and especially with students. He was a big advocate for this place being a place where you could learn about the long history of America and what it stands for. And I don't think there's a better way to do that than through the service of Jim McCloughan and Leroy Petrie. So thank you both for being here today. And I'm going to hop right into it. I'm going to approach today a little bit differently than I have for a couple of reasons. One, it's been a long time since we've been in this room. So I've worked here at the Foundation for almost 12 years, and the last event that we held educationally in this room was in February of 2020, which was a long time ago, right? So we are, more than 2 years since we held an event, and the last event that we held in this room before the pandemic struck was with the Medal of Honor Foundation and the Society, and working with our great recipients. So we're excited that this is our first event back in here today. Now, if you'll indulge me a little bit. So I was a literature major as an undergrad. And so one of the things that I'm always fascinated with is story. And so is anybody familiar with Joseph Campbell's concept of the hero's journey? The hero's journey, anybody? Even if you're not explicitly familiar with it, you're familiar with it, right? How many of you have seen Star Wars? Any Star Wars fans in here? Okay. Lord of the Rings?
Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, Luke Skywalker. there we go.
Leroy's always wanted to be Skywalker.
So you're familiar with the basic kind of storytelling function. And so today, rather than just kind of launch into a lecture, I want to, and hopefully you'll indulge me on this, is we're going to tell stories, because I think that's one of the most powerful ways to pass on the message. And the character development itself is very much based around the concept of storytelling and you sharing your stories to inspire these really important principles of character. So like any good story, to start at the beginning, you have to know the origins of your protagonist. So we're going to start with the origins of our protagonist here. So as we look around the room, a lot of us in here are students, they're young, so I want you to transport yourself not from kind of the valued and honored Medal of Honor recipients that we see before us today, but I want you to think about yourself in the age range. Let's see, how many students, 10, 11, 12 years old? Anybody in that age range, 13, 14, 15? Okay, so I want you to transport yourself back to this age group. Right, so somewhere between 10 and 16, and give us just a little peek into, if we were watching your story, let's say reality TV was following you around, and we were looking for an episode that this is what, we're going to start with you, Leroy, what Leroy was all about as a young man, what would that episode look like?
Oh boy. Leroy at that age, time frame, I was dirtbag, and I was hanging around with kids that weren't good influences. I was ditching school. I didn't care about my grades. I just wanted to go have fun. And I realized one day that I was letting my parents down. I was letting my teachers down, everybody around me. And I looked at my report card. Both my parents worked hard, and They left to work before we left to school. They were home long after we'd been home from school, and I wanted to see my report card before they saw it, and checked the mail, and I looked at my report card and saw my name up at the top, student ID, and then I looked at the grades, and it was F, 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 D, F. And looked around, nobody was on the street, and I realized that my dreams of joining the military or doing anything, anybody who got that piece of paper would look at it and they would think that's who Leroy was. Somebody that didn't even try or care. And I made a conscious decision at that point to stop hanging around with those bad influences and start surrounding myself with people that inspired me, people that supported me. And I made straight A's the rest of my high school after that. And it was also me learning the humility to ask for help. That if I didn't know something, I didn't think less of myself. I went and found the knowledge. And I did that by asking questions. But I also, I still had that in me where I wanted to help other people. And when I started learning new things, I'd share it. And I'd share them with people what helped me be successful in my classes. And we all have great talents. And I looked at it and I said, okay, I'm going to use what I'm good at and help others. But then I'll find other people that are my weaknesses and try to ask them for help. But other than that, running around with 4 brothers, 2 younger, 2 older, didn't have all the video games and Xboxes. We were watching all the action movies and playing with sticks, sword fighting, and playing Army. I don't think any kids anywhere ever went outside and said, let's play Air Force, let's play Navy, let's play Marines. They play Army. And I was starting to go down that wrong path, and I realized that so many people were supporting me, and I was wasting their time and their support. And so I figured it out and got back on the right track.
Yeah, if I could ask just one quick follow-up question before I go to Jim, the young Jim. I want to hear about young Jim. But so you said, you got that report card. That was kind of a transformational moment for you. Another thing when we think about the journey of protagonists, right, is the role of mentors, right? So we think of Yoda or Gandalf. So who was your Yoda? Did you have somebody who really, you mentioned a bunch of people helped you. Was there anybody in particular, a teacher, a relative, a friend who was kind of like a person that you really leaned on in making that transformation?
No, not really a whole lot. I couldn't nail it down to one. I had so much support at family, friends, educators. In fact, at the end of my high school, I got a award from the Chamber of Commerce called the Bootstrap Award. I had no idea what it was. And just told Mom and Dad, we got to go to this dinner and get an award. And they said it was designed off the military. They used to have straps on their boots to pull them up. And they said, that's kind of what you did. You were in a slump and you pulled yourself out. And I said, that's perfect. I want to be in the Army. It lined up well, but I couldn't narrow it down to one. I was grateful for everyone. And it's the same thing with my military. I didn't train myself. I didn't get myself off the battlefield. I didn't go through recovery alone. Everything, people were helping me along the way.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. And Jim, same question to you. If we're looking at Jim from 10 to 16, what would that episode look like? What are we seeing?
I'll answer your the question you just asked first. My father was my hero, and my Uncle Jack. My Uncle Jack was 10 years older than me because my father was 14 when my Uncle Jack was born. So a lot of people thought we were brothers, but he was of great influence to me as an athlete and as a person. And we just buried my Uncle Jack 2 weeks ago, and he died of dementia. But I never have forgotten how much he really, really influenced me. He was also a small athlete, but a very, very good one. At 10 years of age, it had been about a year or so when we finally got water in our house and a flushing toilet. At a little over age 5, we did get electricity. Up to that point, we're pretty primitive. My mom and dad were factory workers, and I was a middle child of 3 children. I went to a one-room country school. We walked a mile south of our house to this one-room country school. I will be reading to the fourth graders at that one-room country school here this month, or next month, excuse me. It's going to be kind of fun. My desk is still there, and my name is not on it. I didn't carve my name in it. It's one of those desks where you lift the top up and put your books in, or you lift the seat up, put your books in, that type of thing. I was probably around 4 foot tall. I've always been short. I was 4'7" going into 7th grade, 4'10" going into my freshman year in high school, and they actually weighed me in the football uniform, so I looked bigger, and I weighed 90 pounds in the football uniform and myself. I had already started to get into athletics, playing Little League baseball and so on and so forth, and I've been singing. I started in the church when I was about 4, so I already was in love with any kind of music at that particular time too. At our house, if you didn't eat what was on your plate, you went hungry. Jim, either eat it, because you're not going to get anything till the next meal. And you had to fight with your 2 brothers to make sure you got enough for yourself, too, if it was a good meal. But I can remember that I always told people we weren't poor, we just didn't have any money. And that was my situation when I was 10 or 11 years old. And again, I loved athletics. We did things, I wished I could go back to that era sometimes, because we could go across the street and catch frogs and feed them to the snakes and all of that kind of stuff. And the one-room country school was K through 8. And it still is in existence. It has some of the highest scores on the standard test in the state of Michigan. Out of the 28 students last year, 21 of them were out of the school district, which means their parents are literally driving them to that school and picking them up every day so they can have that experience. Wow. And I think that's when I was a school teacher when I came back from Vietnam. And that's when I first got my taste of being a school teacher, because once you got into the 3rd grade, you could begin to help the students below you in the 2nd and 1st grade. You were part of the teaching staff. So when I became a teacher, the first thing I would say to my classroom the first day was, I'm not the only teacher in this classroom. You are going to teach each other, you're going to teach me something, and you might get a little bit from your teacher. So that's me at age 10 or 11.
There we go. Okay, so now we have a concept of our protagonist, right? So the next step in the hero's journey is this described as a call to adventure, where that life kind of changes, right? And for both of you, in some ways, that call is not just a call to adventure, but a call to service. And Leroy, if I recall correctly from your story, I mean, from a very young age, you were set on heading into the Army, is that right? So what was it for you?
7 years old.
7 years old. So what was it for you that kind of wanted you to head down that path towards service?
My mother's cousin was deploying Desert Shield, Storm, one of the two. And I started asking the questions. Why is he going way over there across the world to risk his life for people we don't even know? What if he gets killed? And I started getting some of the answers that he wasn't doing it just for them. He was doing it for us as well. And I looked at all the people who have served in the military and a few of my family members, and I said, I want to be that person. I grew up with a pretty good life, enjoying everything we have in this country, and I want to do that for the next generation. Initially, I only thought I was going to serve 4 years. I said, I'll stand guard. And shortly after, 9/11 hit, after I joined, and stayed in a lot longer than I expected.
Sure. And what was that like? Because if I recall, were you going through basic training, or you were in training when 9/11 happened?
I was in pre-Ranger, getting ready for Ranger school. We had a day off to refit our packing list after that, and we were out in this wooded area, a bunch of young soldiers, and the cadre, we had one little small shack, and the cadre there's whispers of what was going on. They had, in the shack, they had a radio or something, and we all wanted to know more, so we all huddled around the shack, and we're trying to ask questions. Of course, cadre said, get your butts back out there, keep training. You might be going to war soon. And little do they know how right they were. because they kept us focused on what was important. Prepare for the unexpected.
Yeah, and if you could, because a lot of the students, I know for those of us who are a little bit older, we remember exactly where we were when 9/11 happened and what it meant and what it felt like. Do you remember, you know, in addition to like kind of preparing for war, like how did you feel? I mean, could you just feel that the world was changing in that moment and on that day?
It was a long time before I actually even saw any of the news footage of what had gone on, but I remember that one day off that we had. Of course, my hair's pretty close up. Not like when I was first in the Army. It was put your hand, go ahead, cut around it. We used to call it a high and tight. And everybody knew you were in the military from that haircut. And so going out in town and around, I just saw what I could only imagine from reading about during Pearl Harbor and World War II, the patriotism across this country. Everybody supporting the military, saying, thank you for what you do, thank you for your service. And that's probably what really stuck with me the most, is that all differences aside, we were attacked and we were all supportive of going and finding those people responsible. And yeah, it was tough. I mean, there wasn't a lot of thanks when I joined the service. And I think about the Vietnam veterans and how they had to fight that war and come back to an ungrateful country for a good portion of them. And even though we weren't getting thanks, it wasn't as bad as a lot of them had it. And so for me, I was okay with that. But whenever we did get a thank you, it made it that much more special. And that people respected what we were doing, that we don't make the choices to go to war, to leave war, that's above us, but we were doing the best we could for everyone.
And then Jim, I mean, an entirely different context for you, right?
Oh, yes. We used to play Cowboys and Indians at that. We played all kinds of games, but I guess that's not even politically correct anymore. So we played Cowboys and Native Americans at that one-room country school. So what's the closest to it but being, you know, a sheriff or maybe a state policeman? So as I grew older, I wanted to be a Michigan State policeman. I told you my height in the 7th grade and my freshman year, I graduated at 5'2". So I became a giant later on. What a lot of people don't know is the stipulation in the Michigan State Police in the 60s was 6 foot tall. Obviously, I realized I wasn't going to make that, so I applied for the academies, and I took this test, and I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy because my Uncle Wayne was he was an electrician as a civilian at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, but my grades were really good on the test, but you had to be way up there. So I chose the Naval Academy, and I was rejected from that later on. I had some great physical exams, and I was the top physical exam, meaning the push-ups and the sit-ups and running in 10 states. But once they found out I was colorblind, red-green colorblind, and they do all of their signals on red, green, and white flags, I was eliminated. So what am I going to do next? Well, my brother was a sophomore in college when I graduated from high school, and he was the first McCloughan to go to college. I got a job in a factory that summer, and I realized my dad worked 43 years in a factory in his lifetime, and my mom 35. I wasn't going to do that, so I decided I would go to college. And of course, I was an athlete, 7 varsity letters in college. And I got to the end of college in 1968, I signed a contract to teach school in May of 68, and I graduated June 4th, and the second week of June, I got a letter from my uncle. Uncle Sam was his name, and he said he would like to give me a physical in July. I really didn't think much about it. I mean, I was so busy in college, I really didn't pay that much attention to the body counts and things like that that were on the news because I didn't watch the news. Just too busy. I was at some kind of a practice after school. So I did pass the physical, of course, in July, and they didn't care if I was colorblind anymore. And actually, the assistant superintendent came to talk to the board. At that particular time, there was a shortage on teachers, and they said, we're 7 teachers short right now. If you take Jim, we'll be 8 teachers short. And the two coaching jobs that he has, we can't replace him. We just don't have enough time to do that at this particular time. So the lady says to me, you mean you don't want to serve your country? And I said, wait a minute, ma'am. My grandpa was in World War I. I have his dog tags in there around. World War I. My dad was in World War II. My Uncle Wayne from Colorado, he was in the end of World War II and then in Korea. And I can remember making peanut butter candy for him and sending it off in popcorn to him in Korea. And at that particular time, my Uncle Jack was just finishing up with the Coast Guard. I said, my whole family has fought for this country. I am not afraid to go. One of the things I got a job that I call a positive job in a negative situation. Draftees do not get the job of a combat medic. But studying to be a coach at Olivet College, I took kinesiology, physiology, anatomy, first aid, advanced first aid, strapping and taping. And I think that's why I got that wonderful job of being able to save lives while lives were being taken. I am not proud, but I'm pleased and I'm honored to have been a part of the United States of America's not only most powerful military in the world, but the most compassionate. We go places to help people who can't help themselves. We defend people who can't defend themselves. Yes, we do. But we'll see what happens. We're going to see what happens in 2022 with our reaction to those that are literally little children losing their lives at this particular point. If they ask me to go, I'll go. I mean that.
So kind of building on that a little bit. So if you look at the journey of the hero, the Campbell arc, right? So once there's a point at which you go from the world of the known, the familiar world, into the world of the unknown, right? And you're encountering this whole new world that's kind of alien to you. And in some ways, I think about in your experiences, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but once you head off and you're sent into war in Vietnam or Iraq and then later Afghanistan, what is that like when you kind of descend into this new world of war, which you've been trained for, but also these new countries and kind of a whole different way of existence? Maybe we'll start with you this time, Jim.
Well, I've been asked the question, would you do it all over again, type of thing. And I've been asked, do you think you're a hero? So I'll try to cover both of those questions. When people ask me if I do it all over again, I say, well, nobody gets up in the morning and thinks, well, I hope there's a war I can go to today. No, you don't think that. But had I not gone to Vietnam, I would have never met the most compassionate, loving, brave, courageous people that I've ever met in my life. And to answer the question, are you a hero? I like the story of the little girl who asked her grandpa, Grandpa, are you a hero? And he says, no, honey, but I served with a lot of them. So those kind of piggyback each other right there. It's amazing. You can't even describe. I have a machine gunner that kept saying to me, Doc, they don't know what we did in Vietnam. They just don't know what we did. And he asked me long enough that I thought of a thing to come back at him with. And I said, Joe, what's it like to have a baby? He said, what? I said, what's it like to have a baby? I don't know. I said, of course you don't. You've never had a baby. And you can't expect people who have not been in your boots to understand totally what you did. I am very excited. Kathy's got me speaking to the Vietnam veterans, and I've spoke on Vietnam Veterans Day quite a few times. They're going to know that they're heroes when I get done. They're going to know, excuse me, students, that they're an ABA. They're an American badass. When I get done, they're going to know that. Yes. And I don't know if you know this stat, but there are over 16 million in the United States who claim they were in Vietnam and they were never in the service.
Yep.
So I'm going to say to these Vietnam veterans, if you're such a terrible person, why would anybody want to be you? And then I tell them it's because you're an ABA. No. After I say it once, I never say the whole thing again. Y'all can translate that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. And Leroy, how about you? I mean, what was that experience like? You grew up in Santa Fe, right? And kind of heading over, the difference between Santa Fe and Iraq and Afghanistan, I would imagine.
Bigger sandbox. No, I think the training, because you go through it and it's so rigorous that you embrace it together as a team. And back to that same notion, not alone, that you find out, you build that bond, and that's what gives you the courage, is knowing that they're your brothers, they're your sisters in uniform, and you do the same for any of your family members. And so when you go there, there's still those butterflies, don't get me wrong. First time going into Afghanistan, we're doing some low-level flying, and the plane's doing some evasive flying, and I'm thinking they're shooting at us. I have no idea because we're blacked out, can't see out the windows, not on the headset. And so I'm like, oh man, I hope we don't get shot out of the sky. And we end up landing, and it was pretty quiet. And then we went out, and we didn't know a whole lot of what our mission was, and we didn't get a very good culture brief, which also hurt us. And we started just doing vehicle interdictions and what we could to try to find bad guys. And it developed over the years. It was so slow, and that's what I think toward the end of the war, what was so long was we started standing up Afghanistan's military later in the game than we should have. And we were doing good, and they were at a crawl phase. They weren't ready to run on their own or walk. And yeah, like Jim here, outside of our control, somebody else made the decision, let's get out of there.
That's right.
But I think it was, people ask me, were you ever afraid? Absolutely. Every single time I deployed, Iraq, Afghanistan, I was afraid. Not of dying. I made my peace with God, said goodbye to my family, and told them I loved them. What I was afraid of was I would miss an IED in the road. I'd miss a shooter in the window. I'd miss an opportunity to train my guys on something that could have saved their lives. My biggest fear was I would have to come home and I'd have to hold and hand a folded flag to a mother, a father, a brother or sister. And that was my biggest fear. But I used that fear. We all have fears, and you can't let them control you. I turned that fear into awareness. And so anytime we kept going down the same road, I didn't get complacent. I focused. I trained my guys on stuff we weren't tasked. And I made it useful, that fear. And I made it work for me. And I knew at the end of the day, war is chaos, and you can't control everything. And if I had to hand that flag to a surviving family member, I wanted to know that I did my best to prevent everything I could and be content with that. And that's all anyone could ever ask from you in anything you do in your life, is as long as you do your best.
So following up on that, once you go into this world, this unknown, this world of warfare, right? I have to imagine, despite the training, I think most of us kind of think about that and think, well, these are the most intense, stressful conditions that human beings can possibly go through, right? Your life is in danger every possible moment, right? You're taking fire, and in a moment that in some ways has come to define a part of who you are, the moment where you were in the action that ultimately earned you the Medal of Honor. Are there thoughts that are going through your head when you're in those battle scenarios that I mean, what is it that compels you, right? Because it's not a common thing, right? This is the highest honor that the military bestows on you. Is there anything going through your head in those moments that causes you to kind of not just kind of rise to a certain level, but to really an elite level in the history of American warfare in terms of how you respond to those outside stressors?
Well, when you go there, you're representing your family. We can go back to my Uncle Jack. I knew I had his influence. And I'm the chairman of the character development program, and that's exactly what it is. You know, it's from the time you're born until you get to that point where you're in Vietnam. And you're representing your family, you're representing the Army, and you're representing the United States of America. But once you get there, you're fighting for each other. You're fighting to get as many people out of there back to the world alive that you possibly can. One of the biggest influences on me and what helped me as a combat medic in Vietnam was 4 years of college football and 4 years of college wrestling. The physical part was great. I was in great physical shape. But the mental part, the mental discipline that I learned from those two sports, and they are contact sports and they're very chaotic at times, right? I mean, in the middle of the mat, you got nobody else to blame. Either you're going to be victorious or the other guy is. So I say that the ability to focus on what in the middle of going into, and I went 10 times into the kill zone, which means that 3 things can happen in that kill zone. That's why it's called a kill zone. The individual out there is going to die, he's going to get killed, he's going to get captured, or his medic's going to save his life. So you focus on what it is you have to do. We would be lying if we said we weren't, anxious. And the people that told me that they weren't afraid, they were the first ones to hide behind a rock. Of course they're not afraid. They're behind the rock. But they're lying if they say they're not afraid. It is the most chaotic, dangerous, unbelievable situation to be in when you're in the middle of war. But there is nothing tighter than the brothers. I have relocated and connected out of the 32 that walked out of my battle. I have reconnected 22 of them to each other. And one particular person took me 89 phone calls to find him. I was relentless to try to, and one of them I just connected about 2 years ago, and last weekend down in Texas at the Halo weekend, he drove up from Spring, Texas, and we saw each other for the first time in 53 years.
Wow.
I put him on a helicopter May 13th, 1969. What a marvelous weekend that made it to reunite with him. He's 6'6", and I told people we were twins. He's in terrible physical shape from his wounds. He had nerve damage and muscles shot away, and he's 6'6", 160 pounds, so he's continuing to lose weight. But hope I answered that question.
Yeah, no. And Leroy, same to you when you're actually in that moment, in that action. That
I think Jim kind of hit on it, that the stressors that you talked about, wrestling, how those helped him cope with the stressors. And I think about me with my 4 brothers. One of us was always in the hospital getting stitches or staples because we were doing not smart stuff. But then also...
Brother stuff.
Yeah. Look, I saw this in a movie. We also, I look at when I was a kid and during my dirtbag days, I got teased all the time. And sometimes I got into fights with those people, and more than likely we were friends afterwards, but I never felt the need to bring a knife or a gun to school. And I look at that and I tell all of you kids that you got to learn how to build resiliency at a young age. Unless something causes you physical harm, name calling, stuff like that, you got to learn how to brush it off. Because if you don't build, life is hard. There's enough stressors in life. If you don't build resilience at a young age, you're not going to make it. And you got to go through a little bit of the hard times to learn how to survive them. And that's really what helped me with the stress was it wasn't easy growing up, just like Jim said. And when you're out there and the family is all you have around you, that's what gives you the comfort. And we don't talk about it much in the military, definitely not in the Rangers, unless but it's a word that love, and the love for your fellow soldier and your country, and that gives you more wings than Red Bull can ever. You'll do amazing things for your brotherly love, you get that sense of calmness. You see the stress in everybody's eyes and that anxiety and going into the unknown or getting shot at and fired upon, but you know you're doing it together.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to add one thing for everybody in this room, but especially the young people. Eleanor Roosevelt has one of the quotes that I hold dear. No one can make you feel inferior without your permission. If somebody calls you a name or puts you down, they don't know you, apparently, because you're not that person that they're talking about. Don't give them permission to put you down. Don't give them permission to make you feel inferior. And then also I want to remind you that, and a lot of people might not know this, not only has Leroy turned things around from a little boy, he's grown up, he's become a hero, he's come back to be one of the members of probably one of the most elite societies in the United States of America, and he's president of the Medal of Honor Society.
And Jim's my partner, he's my vice president.
Don't let anything happen to Leroy.
Or else he's getting all my work. No, it's a great team, and we feed off of each other. And the thing I love is that the generational difference, that he could have ideas that I don't see, and that is a good part of education, I think, is the history and the living history. I mean, I don't have any Vietnam veterans in my family that are alive. And so I reach out to these guys when I have questions about stuff that I might be dealing with, going to visit some Vietnam veterans, and I won't know a question. I'll ask them, hey, how do I engage with them? What do you think I should talk about? What's most important to you? And so we thrive off of that. And then the same off of myself with our generation. It's different for each of us. And I do want to mention something about the hero. And we do see things, I mean, our answers are going to be different all the time. But when people tell me the word hero, I tell my kids, Dad's not a hero. The heroes are the men and the women that are still serving, the ones that are joining, because America will always ask for its sons and daughters to defend our country, our freedoms, and our way of life. And I think about the firemen and the law enforcement and first responders. Shoot, they were taking care of us when we were home. They were taking care of our families when we were deployed. They were doing the job nonstop. We got a lot of gratification because we did it while we were deployed. I'm like, these guys are doing it for us all the time. And I always show appreciation for them, because things you take for granted and don't show appreciation eventually get taken away. I saw this somewhere. There's a quote, and it said, then you end up missing most what you least appreciated.
Yeah. I wanted to follow up. You mentioned earlier resiliency, and as part of the hero's journey in Joseph Campbell, right? You come back and there's a gift that you give back, right? Once you've gone through this journey. And the idea of resiliency really strikes a chord, I think, especially coming out of the pandemic, when we think about the mental health impacts that it's had on society, on students, on teachers. You know, there's a lot of research out there that shows the mental health impacts of the pandemic on students have been really significant. And you both know firsthand and have seen through your work both in the service and in working with veterans kind of the impacts of mental health concerns. So I was wondering if there's any advice you have for students or things that you've seen where we can use kind of the context of your lives and pass it on to students. And before you answer, I'm just going to, after this, I'm going to throw it out to students. So if there are any student questions, if you have a question you want to ask either of our recipients, put your hand up. We have a couple of folks from the Medal of Honor team who are going to take questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, but I'll let you answer that other one about mental health and resilience.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. First of all, I was the second McCloughan to graduate from college. And then my three brothers and I, my mom had an 8th grade education, my father had a high school education. All three of us have our master's degree, and mine was in guidance and counseling. And I taught psychology for almost 4 decades. And sociology. I would start out my classroom, and back then when I first started teaching, psychiatrists and psychologists were called shrinks. Well, that's a great name, isn't it? Shrinks. Sounds like Jim McCloughan, he shrunk, you know. Yeah. So I would open up the section of problematic things and what should you do there and so on and so forth. With, hey, if you cut your leg, what would you do? Let it bleed? Maybe wrap it up with some toilet paper or whatever? No, I'd go to the emergency room. Of course you would. Because there's a doctor there that knows exactly what to do to save you and to save you from bleeding to death, or a nurse. Well, if you have some problems with your thinking, why don't you go and see a doctor? Psychologist, a psychiatrist, and why don't you go to that person so they can help guide you? Now, I, in 2009, for the first time, went to counseling. I had buried everything so deep. I was so active as a coach and a teacher and a community leader, and I know now that I did that so I didn't have to think about what I saw in Vietnam. And I spoke to a group at a base just last summer, and they had 3 suicides already on that base. I think there's 22 a day, Leroy, 20,
Depends
22?
who you ask. It's probably closer to 33.
Close to 33 now, okay? And I told them, that was the first time that I had mentioned in a public setting that I got a master's degree in guidance and counseling. Why can't you take care of it yourself, Jim? Because I can. And that individual, skilled individual, took and walked me through my military experience and actually got me to mention some things, not everything, that I had experienced. If you have a problem, I had a professor, I got to tell you this story. And he told us the story of a guy that came in constantly talking about he was going to take his life. Well, they say that sometimes when people are talking about it, they really don't mean it. But if they get very, very happy, and they're talking about it, then you have a concern. He came in this one day, and he was really happy, and my professor said to him, gee, looks like you're really feeling good today. Yeah, I decided how I'm going to do it. Do what? Take my life. I know how I'm going to do it. I'm going to my chest of drawers and take a drawer out, and this stabilizes them. Sit on the edge of the bed. I'm going to put the gun in my mouth, and I'm going to pull the trigger. And his psychiatrist, my professor, said, who's going to find you? He said, oh, my God. My daughter will be the first one to find me. I can't do that to my daughter. When you think that your problems are so deep that you can't take care of them, know that there's somebody out there that will listen to you. Always have a friend, a relative, a teacher, a coach, I don't care who it is, a minister, pastor, that you can turn to. Remember, if I take my own life, I'm gone. I don't have to worry about it. But the people who are left, the people who love you and care about you and want you around until God's plan is to have the last day of your life, know that. Know there is nothing that you and someone else can't handle together.
And it's a very selfish act that you talk about suicide, and I've been working on that quite a bit for the past several years, that doing what I can to help that. But I heard it explained a couple weeks ago, and it was probably a great definition, analogy, I guess. It's like a suicide vest or a grenade going off, and the blast radius kills the person that's there, but then it injures everyone around it, and it gets little shards as it gets further and further out, and really that's the thing, is like Jim said, have that person that you can be confident in and talk to about any issues you might have, and don't be afraid to, what we call, show a chink in the armor, that it's not weakness. I was seeing 3 psychologists at one time, because if one wasn't available, I'd go to the next one. And if he wasn't available, I'd go to the next one, because it was important to me to be 100% mental health. And in the military, we talk about physical health all the time, and even in society, looking good and getting fit and muscles and getting ready for the beach, but we don't ever talk about our mental health. And that's important to your full body. And especially when we'll raise our hand and say, I can't go on the run tomorrow because I twisted my ankle. But there's a lot of us that won't raise our hand and say, I need help. I need somebody to help me with my finances. I'm having a hard time at home. I live in an abusive home. I need help. I got an abusive girlfriend or boyfriend, or I need help with my finances. Anything that you have. Complete strangers will help you with anything if you're just willing to ask for it. And I was one of those people that had physical courage my whole life. Not afraid of anything. I'll do it. What I lacked was that emotional courage. I had good friends and support network, but I didn't tell them that I was having a hard time. And I went and I got some help. Finally, I saw where, like Jim said, hopefully none of you ever get down that road, but I saw a lot of my friends take their own lives. And I didn't want to go down that same road or even be close to it. And so I started addressing my issues and saying, I need help. And really, with this thing, it's awesome. But when I get dressed in my dress uniform, or even putting that top button on, I get cramped. I got carpal tunnel, and it got to the point where I was traveling alone sometimes, and I didn't have a problem going out and finding the cleaning lady in the hallway and saying, hey, can you help me with this top button? Because it was something I needed to be done. And rather than sit there and try to struggle on my own through life, I realized I could probably get through this, but it's a lot easier if I let people know that I need help.
Yeah, and I often tell especially those in the classroom, as you well know, I was a classroom teacher for 4 decades. You have to be physically fit, you have to be mentally fit, and the third one is very, very important. You have to be spiritually fit. And if you can't find anybody, open whatever religion you are, open up your good book and read in there, and you'll find out that you're worth it. You are worth it.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I want to turn to the audience. Students, you have a unique opportunity here to ask questions to Medal of Honor recipients. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and one of our team members will come by with a microphone. So it looks like maybe Jason, do we have a question here?
Hello, my name's Christian Mills. I'm going to be enlisting into the United States Marine Corps. I'm shipping in August. What would be your #1 piece of advice for me?
Don't do it. Going to the Army. Going to the Army.
What are you doing? What are you doing to yourself?
My best friend's a Marine, but I would say exactly what I tell all the same thing to all the new recruits. Whether you sign up for 4 years or 40 years, it's going to be the best time of your life. It's going to have its ups and downs just like anything, but you're going to build relationships and you're going to see people that have shared values of teamwork, initiative, and that's where you're going to love. And when you get out, the hard part of transitioning when you're going to get out is you go back to civilian life and you realize, not everybody, but there's a lot of oxygen thieves out there and a lot of people that'll step on each other just to get ahead in life. And they don't know what a team is, and that's what you're going to miss. And so whatever comes at you when you join, just enjoy it, because you're going to miss it one day.
I was so busy as an individual growing up, and I went to a small college, so I really hadn't been out into the world, so to speak, until I was drafted into the United States Army. And you will be a member of the most diverse group of people that you ever will be a member of. And I often tell the story. When they called, medic! Yeah, you heard it. I didn't say, how heavy are you? What's your nationality? What church do you go to? What's the color of your skin? Hey, are you smart, dumb? What are you? No, I jumped up the minute I heard that. And I rushed to where that particular voice came from. And guess what I saw once I got there? No matter what category they belonged to that I just mentioned, they all had in common that they bled red American blood. And yes, I showed a video on this blind singer. His name is Miedema. I don't know if anybody knows who he is, but he's a terrific, well-known singer. Been blind since youth and plays the piano. And he was asked once, what do you feel about your disability? He said, my disability? The guy says, yeah, dude, you're blind. He said, oh, I've always just thought of that as one of my characteristics. Think about that. You have all kinds of characteristics, and if somebody uses one of those characteristics to put you down, remember Eleanor Roosevelt.
I gotta share this with you all. I just, my wife got it for me for Christmas, and I finally did it and sent it in. I got the results back from the genealogy or the 23andMe, and it confirmed everything I thought. Because I normally was a person that go down the check boxes and I'd check other, and I'd write in trail mix. But it is. We're all. That's the way you're going to look at it. Is that you're all part of one team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think we have a question there in the middle with the microphone, and then we'll go over there, and then.
What was both of your guys' initial reaction receiving the Medal of Honor?
Oh.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, this doesn't belong to me. It belongs to 89 men that fought in that battle. I just take care of it for them, okay? And that's the brotherhood there. But they don't have to do all this talking either. That is not fair, you know. It's just not fair. It was surreal, young man, just surreal to have that put around my neck. A million things went through my mind as I stood there and listened to the President of the United States tell people what I had done. I had never talked about my service experience. As a matter of fact, when I found out I was going to get the medal, two of the guys that I coached with for over 40 years thought I was joking when I told them I was going to get it. My son, who is a lieutenant detective in the Michigan State Police, you don't have to be 6 foot anymore. He got a call from his sergeant detective the day that I received it, July the 31st, 2017, and he said, Jamie, I saw your father on TV today, get the Medal of Honor from President Trump. When did you first hear this story? And my son said, today, the same time you did. So, yeah, I felt humbled, very humbled and surreal, like this is kind of a dream happening around me, you know.
I'm surprised your son didn't say, thanks for the invite, Dad.
Yeah.
It's a tough day. I mean, there's so much going on that day.
Oh, there's so much.
And everybody that, and I don't know, it's different for each recipient, but you got to do your invite list.
100 people.
I was at 150.
Oh, I got cheated.
No, this last guy, I tried to ask him, I told him, hey, I'll advocate for you, delay it till next spring. I think he only got like 20. Oh, wow. Because of COVID and
Oh, wow.
DC at the time.
Now I feel
whatever.
good again.
And I told him, it's okay if you hold off because you only get one shot at this. You don't get to do it again. Right. And that was the nice part. I whispered actually in the president's ear during the ceremony, and he had this smile, and I guess there's a million photographers going off. I mean, it sounds like an ocean. It's crazy, and I did find out I'm not epileptic, so that was good. But everybody wanted to know what I whispered in his ear, and I was like, man, I can make up whatever I want. Nobody knows, it's between him and I, but I said, rarely do you get the chance to have everybody you want under one roof that means something to you, and it's usually at your funeral, and you're not there to enjoy it. And I said, to have, for me, most of the guys that were on the mission with me that could be there, that weren't deployed again or something, that's what made it special for me, is that I had my family, the family of the guy we lost, and the guys that were on that mission with me.
One of my guests of the 100 was a childhood friend of mine who is one of 3 Michigan athletes who's in the National High School Hall of Fame. He averaged 44 points a game in 1965, and if the three-point play would have been in, he would have averaged 60 points a game. He was 5'7" and could dunk with both hands. He scored 25 touchdowns his senior year and only touched the ball 82 times. Could high jump 6'1". Okay, now take yourself to my medal presentation. At the end, the president awkwardly leaned down and gave me this hug. And so I said to him at that particular time, sir, thank you for giving up your private life to become our president. That's what I said. So I'm sitting around the table that night, and the co-captain of my football team from high school is sitting here, and Richie Jordan is that great athlete that's in the National Hall of Fame. He was sitting across the table. He said, what did you say to the president? And I told him. He said, well, what did he say to you? And I leaned into the table and I said, he said, do you know Richie Jordan? And my friend, Dick Ely, went home and told the story, do you know Dick Ely?
That's the thing about whispers. You can make up whatever
That's
you want.
right.
I do want to tell you, one of the most important things for me, though, was 2 days after the ceremony. You do the White House ceremony, then you go to the Pentagon, do the Pentagon ceremony, and then we flew out to New York to do some interviews and stuff. And it was me and my family, and had the whole family, 6 o'clock in the morning, Fox and Friends, were exhausted. It's just been go, go, go for the past 4 or 5 days. And they pan over to my son, who was 7 years old at the time, live TV. And they said, how do you feel about your dad receiving the medal, going to the White House and meeting the president? And I'm looking down the couch going, oh, crap. What's he going to say? And he sits up a little straighter, looks directly into the camera, takes a deep breath, and he said, I'm really proud of my dad, but I'm more happy that he saved some of his buddies and they're still alive.
No, amen.
And for me, that was the best. Because at 7 years old, he understood exactly what we were doing and why.
That was a great question, young man.
What's
You
that?
get the front question?
Oh, let's go here and then up here. Yeah.
I know you.
Would you if you had to go into the military again, would you go into a different military branch? Or would you stay in the Army?
Would we go into the same military branch?
Would you go back to the Army if you had to go again?
Oh, yeah. I'm actually, it's all part of that also, that the United States Army is a very powerful military branch. As a matter of fact, 38,000 of the 58,000, I believe, died, were Army in Vietnam. Yeah, and you know, they're a frontline unit. We're trained to do that. Of course, there's other things that you can do in the Army. And right now, they're after the valedictorians because they have some jobs in the Army now that take people with more brains than I got. That's for sure.
I think it wouldn't matter to me what branch I was in. I'd join any branch over again. But I'd definitely try to get back into special operations. Those folks not only volunteer for the military, but then they volunteer multiple times over for airborne school, special training, ranger school, SF, special forces. And so these people are really committed. They not only did it once, they did it multiple times. And that's what I joined up the first time. That's what I wanted to be around. Mm-hmm. People that had that same amount of commitment that I had.
Mm-hmm. I tell people that I was a coach, and I could, deep inside of me, I knew what I had to teach these young men to be a part of a team and to be cohesive, okay? I tell people, we went into that battle with 89 men. There was no forward observation, and there was 2,000 NVA and 700 VC in the area that they took us into. That's 31 to 1, if you figure it out. But I tell people, if it hadn't been for the big team, the Marines coming in with their Cobras, the Navy shooting from 6 miles out their big guns onto the enemy, the Air Force coming in with their Spooky and dropping flares so that we could see the enemy and pick them off, and also they had 50 cals on there that took care of them also. Without the big team, it doesn't matter what the branch is. And we kid each other, but I'll tell you what, I don't care what branch you belong to or what branch you're going to join, young people. Just make sure you commit yourself. My father told me at a young age, Jim, if you're given a job, never do it halfway. Do it to the best of your ability and do it until the job is done. That's why I didn't get on a helicopter the first night when I was wounded. I was wounded twice the next day, but I'd rather be dead in a rice paddy than alive in a hospital and find out that one of my men didn't make it because their medic wasn't there. My dad was whispering in my ear, never do it halfway. Do it to the best of your ability, and don't do it till the job's done. And I knew the job was not done.
All right, we just have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to try to get through 3 more questions here. I know we had one up front, and then we'll go there, and then we'll end right there. So have a good one, but I think we had our hand up here.
Mic up front, or
yeah.
I'm sorry to say that I can't hear very well. But I'm still able
same.
to hear you okay. Okay, my question is, why does it take so long for you to get the Medal of Honor? Even if your company commander's in front of you, and if your platoon leader's there with you, they have your medical records, and it takes 25 to 50 years before you get the medal. If you don't believe that, look at
Well, I'll tell you, this question was, why does it take so long for the process to receive the approval of a Medal of Honor? And typically, if everything goes perfect, it's about 3 years. And that's because it gets recommended at the bottom level from your platoon leader and whatever lowest level, and then it goes up the chain of command. And at each level of the chain of command, it gets scrutinized to no end. And then it has to go to get voted on by Congress. And once it's approved there, after it's passed through DOD, then the president awards it in the name of Congress. The reason why some of them take longer can be various things. They've looked at upgrading some of the past awards, as well as the packet did not come through the military from the bottom up. And so then they got to submit it through a Congress member to say, here, we built the packet, the unit, this was 30 years ago, here, can you take a look at this? And so the approval process, and there's still some that's kind of gray at the top that a lot of people don't know about. And, but it normally takes about 3 years if everything goes perfect.
So, 1969, I went into Killing Zone 10 times. 4 months later, my lieutenant, my platoon leader, came up to me and said, Doc, I put you in for the Distinguished Service Cross, but my superior told me you're nothing but a PFC. They don't get that, put you in for the Bronze Star. And I looked at him and I said, sir, I'm not here to get any medals or ribbons on my chest. I just want to go home and be a teacher, a coach, and a dad. 40 years later, that man went after the Distinguished Service Cross. It took him 6 years and 4 months to get it from the Human Relations Committee into the Army Board of Decorations and Awards, which is where it has to be to really start, okay?
Yeah.
Took him a total of 8 years. You need 2 eyewitness letters. 32 of us walked out of that battle, and the lieutenant had 9 eyewitness letters. So Ashton Carter was the end of Obama's reign. He got the case on his desk. He looked at it. He looked at the stack of other stuff, 9 letters, said, no, the Distinguished Service Cross is not high enough. And he's the one that recommended me for the Congressional Medal of Honor. Not out of the woods. Debbie Stabenow had to write a bill to be passed in the House and the Senate to waive the 5-year stipulation. You must give that within 5 years of the action. It had been 47 years when she wrote. It passed in the House and the Senate, and then I was presented the medal. Now, the rest of the story, Paul Harvey. For those of you that know Paul Harvey out there, he used to have, at the end of his talk, put the nail in the coffin, so to speak. I know who that superior is now. I've figured it out. And I can't wait to call him and thank him for discriminating against me in 1969. Because 9 men got to tell the real story, and I'm not wearing the Distinguished Service Cross. Because you discriminated against me, I'm wearing the Congressional Medal of Honor for 89 men that fought in that battle.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Aiden Julian of Royal Junior ROTC. And my question is, if you had to describe your experience in one word or sentence, what would it be?
What was his question?
So the question is, if you had to describe your experience in one word or sentence, you can use commas.
My experience in the military?
Yes, I think so, yep.
One word? I don't know. Let me think a minute here.
Can I have 2 words?
You get a word or a
One
sentence.
word, yeah. I don't know.
Experience of life, experience the wearing the medal. I mean, it's a vast question, but I'll answer it. Not enough. Not enough experience. Mm-hmm. My knowledge of the Medal of Honor, I know a lot, but not everything. My experience in the military, I did 15 years. There's people that have done 40 plus. So my experience compared to theirs is not a whole lot. There's always more for me to learn, and there's always more for me to do and see. I wake up every morning, I breathe air into my lungs, and I open my eyes, and I'm grateful that I'm blessed with another opportunity to have more experiences every day and do something to better others around me and myself.
The one word that I would give, and I'm going to take it from our character development program, is patriotism. That anybody that stands up for their country and the American values, and as Leroy mentioned earlier, you got to think about the police, the firefighters, and the first responders. I always include them in the individuals who are so patriotic that all of those people try to keep our freedom and liberties at bay and would do anything to be patriotic.
I was going to say your one word, the BA, whatever.
ABA. ABA.
Excellent. And our last question of the day.
Hi, my name is Thomas Green. I'm 6th grade from High Desert. And I just have one question to ask. If you could change like one thing you in like
From the past?
your service to get the Medal of Honor, what would you change?
What would we change to get the Medal of Honor? Oh,
Yeah.
I don't.
During your
First of all, I wasn't there trying to earn the Medal of Honor, and you don't do that. You serve your country in the MOS, which is your military occupational service, and that would be medic for me. You serve it to the best of your ability, and try to. One of my biggest regrets was that in battles where I had mass casualties and I had to do triage, where I knew this individual was going to die. That's the worst thing that I had to do. I would try to change it so I wouldn't have to make that decision. He's going to die, so really I have so many people here that I couldn't spend the time on him. Who knows, maybe a miracle would have happened. I doubt it, but I've had to live with that my entire life. I would like to change that if I possibly could.
I joke and I tell people I would have probably picked up that grenade with my left hand because learning everything over again has not been easy. And but in all honesty, I wouldn't change anything. Everything that has happened in my life has made me who I am.
And everything had a purpose.
Yeah.
I'd just like to mention that I love your boots. Are you a sheriff? I can see that. I love your boots. And I would like to thank everyone who came out today to be in this room and to lighten and enlighten individuals on the things that you may not have known before you came today.
And everybody online, too.
Yeah, everybody back there with a camera.
I do want to add one little thing. What was shocking to me, because my son's graduating high school this year, was I started getting smart on all these different platforms, Microsoft Teams and Zoom and all those, and because I couldn't come here. I couldn't go out and talk to veterans. I couldn't go out talk to military. There was a lot of things I wanted to do, and I had to get smart on those to learn. And a lot of young kids like yourselves all have cell phones, and they realize that need even more than that. I know I was shocked when I saw all these kids when COVID was going on. I miss my friends. I want to go back to school. I was like, here's these kids that I hate school. I don't want to go to school. And now they're begging to go back to school. And it's because you miss the human aspect of having your friends and having people you can talk to and rely on that share your same ideas and values. And like I said, don't take things for granted. And reach out to those people and let them know that they mean something to you.
Well, that's great. A couple things, and then we're going to wrap up with a special gift, which will be a surprise to you, but I think you'll enjoy it. So one, we're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes. Leroy and Jim are going to be signing copies of the Medal of Honor book up in our museum store, which is upstairs. So if you want to get a copy of that, it's going to be upstairs. Two, one of the things that President Reagan said that always strikes me whenever we partner up with the Congressional Medal of Honor Society and host you all is, I think, one of his most important quotes, which is, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And it must be both preserved and passed on from one generation to the next. And I always say this, both you, through your service in the military, you worked very hard to preserve it. Through your service to students and through this program, you were working hard to pass it from one generation to the next. And I think that would make President Reagan incredibly happy to have you both here. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here today and for all the incredible work that you do to lift up students through your work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony.
I want to share my favorite Reagan quote that I found a few years back, and I tell everybody about it, and I put it on my emails. And he said, we can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. And that's really what makes a difference in this world, that not everybody can join the military. You heard Jim's exclusions for being colorblind, and some people get told they can't serve, even though they want to so much. But every single person in this country can be a patriot. We look today now to many of my fellow wounded, and the people taking care of them. Where the government can't is those private citizens, those patriots that are supporting these organizations. And that's my message to you, is just do something good with your life. Do the best you can.
Excellent.
Jim, you got anything before we wrap up?
Yeah, we sure do.
And so last but not least, so we've gathered together, we've talked about coming back together. You've had some incredible stories, you've had the gift of knowledge, and because we're together, we might as well one more gift, and that's the gift of song, so I want to turn it over to Jim here.
Oh.
Whoa! I'm number two. I'm number two. No problem. This song was written by Irving Berlin in 1929. Kate Smith made it popular in, I believe, the early 1940s. It was in contention to be the national anthem at one time. It has a tag on it, and after 9/11, you heard this a lot of times. I know I saw an Irish tenor fireman sing it at a lot of baseball games after 9/11. It has a tag. You might not recognize it till I get done with the tag. Let the storm clouds gather far across the sea as I pledge allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. Oh, God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Hey, you sound pretty good. I might take you with me.
Well, I don't think we can top that as an ending. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Leroy.
Thank
This
you.
has been fantastic. We appreciate it. You are both welcome back anytime. And thank you, students, guests. We appreciate you coming out today to hear these stories and to gather with us for the first time in a couple of years. So with that, we're going to head off stage.
We'll see you upstairs.
Yeah.
See you upstairs.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated as our special guests leave the building. The book signing will be in the museum store. Thank you for coming, and we hope to see you again at our next event.